All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another Spin That Shit podcast. We got a great artist today. Benjamin Todd of Lost Dog Street Band's joining us. Big fan. I think he's a super writer. Great guy. New album's coming out called Glory. So we're going to definitely talk about that here at the end of the month. It's, I believe, the 21st of January. It drops. So we're going to talk about a few songs and some of that, and then along with several other things. Also, want to say thank you to everyone that's been supporting us. The channel is growing, getting more support. We're on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, of course. Share, like, tell your mom and grandma, whatever you got to do. We're trying to, build this. I'm a one-man band right now, so I'm doing it all. So appreciate the support. And before we talk to Ben, I do want to say, go see them live. Go see Ashley, Ben, and Jeff on stage. It's a great experience. It's one of those type of bands that when they come to town, I don't miss. I would go to every show, and each show is slightly different. So if you're going to be on tour, they're going to be at Birds Creek Music Festival. I had a great time there last year. They performed, so they're back again this year, actually. As what the lineup's crazy. So it's a good one to go to there in Tennessee. So check them out too. Let's go talk to Ben. You good?
I'm good.
All right, buddy. Well, we have a good one here today. Benjamin Todd's with us. What's going on, man?
How you doing?
Good. Real excited about this new album you got coming out, so I figured we'd chat about that. But first, we'd like to, can you go ahead and just give us a little brief background, where you're from, influences, that sort of thing? That's kind of how we kick things off on this show.
Let's see. I was born and raised in Sumner County, Tennessee, which is right on the border, the southern border of Kentucky, in between the southern border of Kentucky and Davidson County, which is Nashville, Tennessee. So I was born and raised about 30 minutes from Nashville. Spent most of my formative years there. Was a rebellious punk kid. Started running away when I was about 13 and left home on freight trains and hitchhiking when I was 16. And it all went from there.
Yeah.
I started out 14 years old, more or less in the punk community in Nashville, which was thriving and incredible at the time, for better, for worse, whatever that means.
You picked up a guitar during that time, or did that come later?
I started playing when I was about 14. I started playing on Lower Broadway in downtown Nashville around 14. I wasn't really into country music at that time. It was more like folk music and folk punk. But three was a huge influence. Bob Dylan, Gordon Lightfoot, all the old folkies. And I got into country music probably around 16, 17. That's when I started being introduced to it, or country. There were plenty of people who wouldn't consider Guy Clark or Townes Van Zandt
right
country, just the same people who don't consider anything but red dirt honky tonk country. But yeah, it's been a long road.
Yeah, I've seen other interviews with you talking about hopping trains and stuff, and I mean, I don't know if you said it exactly like this, but ever since then I've been intrigued. You said it's like one of the greatest ways to experience America or the US. And ever since then I've been wanting to do it myself.
Yeah, there's only a few main lines that run Amtrak or ever have ran Amtrak. So when you think about it, the majority of the lines I rode my youth, and still occasionally do, I try to once a year. The way you can see them, or the workers and hobos. So there are parts and corners of this country that you can only see that way. And as far as an experience, it's the most American thing that exists, just about.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to have to do it. So, with those influences, I mean, gosh, you listed so many good ones. I mean, I don't think you can go wrong in that wheelhouse. That kind of shaped you as a songwriter. Was that really what you were paying attention to the most? Just lyrical content, the stories they told?
Yeah, yeah, I would say Jim Ringer is a huge influence. Who's a very unknown guy. He died, I think, in his mid 40s or something. But Townes Van Zandt, Steve Earle, Guy Clark, huge influences of mine. I listen to a lot of Randy Travis. I listen to a lot of George Jones.
Yeah.
Beyond that, just classics. I don't listen to a lot of music in general. I was on the bum for like a decade. I remember, settling down here in Kentucky, and me and Ashley, my wife, kind of remarked, like, we really haven't had a way to listen to music. The only way we listen to music is if we were around a fire or under a bridge with, another group of travelers and shared a song. There are plenty of songs that I bust for years that I didn't hear the original ever. I heard it from another traveler, and then I played it, and then someone was like, "Oh, that George Jones tune?" I was like, I didn't even know it was George Jones.
That's crazy.
Wow.
Wow.
So it's like The Mountain. Me and Sierra used to bust that together when we had a busking set, in different locations all over the country. And when we ran around together, a decade ago almost now.
Yeah.
And I had never heard this song from Steve Earle, and that's actually her arrangement. I think that's in the description. I think I made it a point to make sure she's the first person I heard that song from, and she's the first person I heard do it in 2/4 rather than Steve Earle does it in a waltz.
Gotcha.
So
that's interesting.
My musical influence is framed in that way.
Yeah. So fast forward to now, we have this new album coming out, and you've released quite a bit of material at this point in your career. And I got to say, I'm obviously, huge fan. Everything you do, I would say, and I'm not trying to kiss your ass or anything, I would say that you're probably one of the better or the best songwriter of my generation or my time. I'd put you in that category.
That is my goal. So,
yeah. And I think that really comes from your honesty, whether no matter what the topic may be on the particular song, but for me, music is feeling. And when you sing about something, I believe you. There's a lot of shit on the radio, as you know, that's just like 15 people wrote it, and then it's all made up. They didn't live that life,
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that about your music in general. And then, so what can you tell me about this new album that might be a little bit different than some of the past stuff you've been doing? Glory, which comes out here in a few weeks, right? I think the 21st.
Yep. 21st. Yep.
So it's already out there. We've had a couple sneak peeks and previews on songs, Until I Recoup. I really like that song. I'm pretty sure that's track 1, right? Out of 10 tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wrote that song. I was having a conversation with Hayden Karchmer, the Hill Country Devil, on the phone. And, we typically check in with each other, once a month and have a good hour and a half, whatever conversation. And we were talking about love languages and how people are hurt. And I can't remember what the 3 were. Either you feel unlovable, something else, and something else. But the unlovable, we both kind of recognized. I was like, yeah, that's kind of in my psychology. I feel unlovable. That's a part of who I am. And he felt similar out of the three basic philosophical traps that people get in. And that's where the line, I think the third verse, I'm unlovable, I'm crazy, and mean, I've got hell in my eyes, like I'm back on the streets. But we were talking about a lot of different things. But as soon as I got off the phone, I had already written the hook, the chorus hook to that. Because I thought it was a good melody. But that conversation charged the rest of that song. And then an hour later, I sent him that song and he was like, you motherfucker, how do you do that? I don't know, man, I'm magic.
Sometimes it just flows like that, man.
Yeah. But generally, the way that I create albums, and I think the way that most people create albums is, or at least the songwriters that I know, there's no formulation of like an album concept typically. I think that's more reserved for sort of the music row industry concepts. It's like people writing songs together, people doing that for work. Like people who are not artists, who are not actually artists, might build an album that way. They're like, all right, we're going to write, 10 songs in this vein, and we have to complement this song with something with this concept, and that song with this concept, yada yada. For me, it's always been, I get inspiration for individual songs. Each one is its own little nugget. It's its own little experience. Its own little personal trauma for me. And when I begin to make an album, I just kind of go through stacks and stacks of songs and pull. And typically I end up recording about 14 demos for an album. And then you just, you start shaving. You're like, well, this one isn't strong enough. This one just doesn't fit this album. An example, a good example would be Sorry for the Things. I recorded Sorry for the Things for 5 different albums. It became a running joke because every time I didn't like the recording, it didn't work out. What's the damn tune? Ballad of a Broken Man. I recorded that song for the last 3 Lost Dog albums. And for whatever reason, I cannot get a studio version of that makes any fucking sense. Just doesn't work. So me and Ashley cut it live, Magnolia Session, and, take it. Once I record it, it's not mine anymore. It's the public's. It's like, there you go. But so as far as the distinction between this album and another, for me and my process, it's never any different. So I don't know what's different about it. Other than it's a maverick like all of my albums. It's different for what it intrinsically is, but as far as the process, it's always been the same for me.
Okay.
This album no, I think I usually end albums on somewhat high notes, I guess. I think we ended Rage and Tragedy with a instrumental that's kind of a high note, the banjo tune. Weight of a Trigger, what did that end with? Lazy Moonshiner, maybe. I don't know. Maybe I don't.
I don't think it's that one, but
I don't know my albums well enough to talk about them. Is essentially the problem here. I really couldn't tell you much about them. They're kind of garbage. You shouldn't buy them. Yeah.
Yeah, right. I get what you're saying. Basically, this is going to be a continuation of your hard work that's been working for you over these past few years. And so yeah, I mean, based off of what I already heard and what I already know you can do, I'm sure it's going to be great. I already did the pre-order, so hopefully, you know how vinyl is right now. So who knows how long that will be, but looking forward to it.
I don't know, but a little birdie says there might be a wreck pressing plant coming to Muhlenberg. So
Really? That'd
Yeah.
be nice.
Yeah.
So the song you were talking about with the Magnolia Sessions, were you finally happy with that recording at least, even though it was more, totally different idea versus a studio album?
No, I guess I'll just be frank. I didn't like the Magnolia Session at all.
Really?
For me personally, as like a perfectionist and as someone, I mean, we have notoriety within fan bases. But I probably have built the ugliest legacy possible with Lost Dog. Like, I mean, you go back on albums that I listen to, there are just stark mistakes. There are timing, there are just like out of key, there are notes out of time. There are huge vocal mistakes that I just let slide because I was young and I really didn't take it seriously. So what was the question?
I was just saying if you were happy with the recording of the Magnolia. I mean, that's a totally different idea behind that kind of recording.
Yeah,
and
no.
Especially like on some of them songs you said that were, you tried to get them on records, but never was quite happy with the studio version of it. So you went ahead and kind of cut this live session. But most artists I talk to, they don't.
Day.
Go ahead.
The Magnolia Session was an emotional day in general. Probably the dog that I've known maybe the longest in my life had passed, or no, that was her last day on Earth. She was going to be put down the next day, and that was Erica Poor's dog from my childhood growing up in the punk scene. She was kind of the matriarch of the punk scene. She kept everyone in line and made sure everyone had a place to stay. But her dog Itchy, well, it just so happened that Erica married Dan Emery, who is basically the father of the punk scene. Basically, the mother and the father of the Nashville punk scene got married, which is fucking incredible. I had a great kid. But that dog had been in every single Lost Dog recording. That dog's bark is in multiple recordings. That dog's toenails on the floor were multiple recordings. So the execution of the Magnolia Session, it was hard. It was a hard day. And I can hear that personally in that recording. And most of the time that makes things better, in my opinion. Like if I play a show where I'm fucking pissed off or I'm miserable, sometimes I can pull something out of my stomach and really run with that. But that day I couldn't. So it's more that from my own examination of my own art, I don't feel I executed on that recording as well as I could have whatsoever. So I guess that's more or less my take on it.
Yeah, I see what you mean. And that's probably for me, like why on a personal level, why I like live cut albums. They're more, I don't know, human, I guess you could say, because, mistakes are made or sounds that shouldn't have been there ended up happening. Something happened off in the distance or whatever. It's just a closer connection. It's more real to me. But that's coming from just probably that kind of punk rock attitude background too. I grew up screaming in a microphone, that sort of thing. I was in those scenes around here and was in a couple bands myself. But yeah, I liked it.
Well, I'm happy someone does. But I guess the point I was trying to make is my career with Lost Dog has been very patched and ugly to begin with. So I wasn't excited to put out the Magnolia Session in that respect. But I also knew that it was for a very particular type of fan. a real diehard fan and the type of fan that really loves the stripped down raw stuff, which there's a lot of people that really love that. So regardless of how I felt about it, I knew that it would get a good reception.
Right. Yeah, that's true. And that's probably where I fit. I listen to a lot of old music that's even 100 years old. Obviously back then technology and recordings weren't the greatest. Some of the shit that would go down on them, I kind of are drawn to them in a weird way.
Yeah.
But kind of, you spoke of playing band. You did play banjo on that record or on Magnolia. That's one question I always had for you. I think I've seen you probably in concert, I don't know, 8 times over the past 5-6 years. I don't know, but I've never seen you on stage with the banjo. Are you just not as comfortable with one, or you think just the guitar is a better fit, or can you kind of enlighten me on that?
So for me, it's all about production. The banjo is a temperamental instrument. It's a pain in the fucking ass on a stage. It's hard to keep in tune. It's hard to adjust the EQ on. It's hard to not get feedback. It takes a lot of time and effort each and every show to get it right. And essentially, especially the stages that we're playing now, where in the smaller markets, we're doing 300-400, and the larger markets we're doing 600 to 1,000 people. You have very little room for error. Any variable that comes about in the course before or during a show that can cause any type of chaos.
Right.
I'm a very anxiety-ridden person. So like even the thought of like introducing the banjo on a stage is hard, but we are taking our own sound guy for the first time ever on this next tour coming up starting the 13th, which will give new opportunities, essentially.
Right.
Something like that could possibly work if I fundamentally had that guy there every night. But people ask me questions about why I don't play this song or that song. And pretty much every reason comes down to practicality. There's a list of tunes that I won't play because they're in 4th position. They're capoed on the 4th. So even capoing on the 2nd, the transition to that, the intonation on the guitar completely changes. Some artists don't give a shit about it, and some artists aren't fazed by it. But It makes everything slightly sharp. So once you get up to the 4th, you're talking about a huge dip in sharpness. The other variable with our set list are my hands. I was a junkie for years. I have nerve damage in both arms from shooting dope and riding trains and turning wrenches and beating myself up and fighting. And, I've got scars on every inch of me from every one of those things. So one part of it is certain positions on guitar really hurt my hands. So you'll notice in our sets, typically if we do a really fast song, the immediate song afterward will be a waltz or be something that I finger pick very softly, because my hands
kind of give it a break.
My hands have been terrorizing me for the past 2. Like we just practice every single song, just like it's painful. So, and I've been to a lot of specialists, and I'll do it further when I have time. But I'm an old man in this scene. It's not years, it's the miles. So even people that, and whether or not anyone wants to admit it, I don't give a shit. I've lived harder than anyone in this fucking scene. I've read every autobiography of everybody. George Jones might have me beat, but Towns guy, all those guys, I've been in worse situations. I smell worse shit. I've been in worse fights. Like it's just a fact. I'm sorry. I do research. I know what life they lived. I lived it too. So I fucked myself up. Got to fix it somehow. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I can see how some guys just, it's another show, a live gig, move on. I don't have to be, perfect every night. So that's good I think that's great that you take all that in consideration and try and do your best every night for people, that spend money on a ticket or whatnot. They want to see, a good show. I got a story I got to share. I ran into you years ago at Muddy Roots, and you happened to be playing there by yourself, actually. And there was this younger looking girl running around, and it must have rained. I can't remember exactly. It was half bent, drinking too much, but she was covered head to toe in mud, and she had no shoes on. That's the great thing about Muddy Roots. There's all different types of people, that come to that show. And she came up to me, and I drug up a cooler, and I was waiting for your set. And she was like, "Can I have a beer?" And I was just like, "Oh man, I'm not trying to get kicked out of here for giving an underage girl a beer." I don't even know how old she is. She looked like she could have been or not. I don't know. So I told her no. And then you were getting ready to start, and then she started yelling for all her friends to come. "Hey, Benjamin, he's getting ready to play." And you start going into those songs that are pretty tough to deal with, especially talking about using, then like her and like three other people, they just started fucking crying their eyes out. And I was just like, holy shit. Like I just had chills all down my arms, like how much that your shit was affecting everyone in the crowd. And after the set, I just felt like a dickhead. I went over there and gave her a beer, and she ended up being like 22 or something anyway. But she's like, "No worry." I told her why I didn't, and she's like, "No worries." And she basically just gave me a hug, and she was covered in mud, and I just had this big mud print on me all damn day. It was hilarious. But that always stuck with me. So every time I see you at a show, I'm constantly looking in the crowd to see if anyone's got, tears running on some of these songs. They're tough songs to listen to if you're, not in the right frame of mind, Is that something you experience? Have you noticed that in the crowd while you're playing, or do you try not to even, look into the crowd that often, or just focus on what you're doing?
So basically, my general philosophy is to try to not view anybody in the crowd in general. There have been many times that people that I knew would come and try to surprise me on the front row, and I wouldn't see them all night. They come after the show and be like, "Hey, did you see me? I was in the front row screaming the whole time." I was like, no, I had no idea, because, well, the way that my mind works, I get distracted really easily. I don't like to do two things at once. Like I won't walk and smoke. I have limited attention, like a lot of men in general. I'm very classic left brain male psychology. Like I focus and I compartmentalize things,
Right.
And then I hear, Ashley and Jeff, they'll tell me stories all the time. Like, "Yeah, I got distracted by this person in the crowd doing this." I'm like, "Well, see, don't fucking look at him and you won't get distracted all the time." Like but yeah, it's funny, that show, me and Ashley had just split up, and we canceled literally 2 shows. It was 2 shows until Muddy Roots we were supposed to play. And me and Ashley had a falling out. It was my fault, absolutely. I was a piece of shit back then. In North Carolina, I'd gotten a ride because she took the vehicle. She got everything, which is more than fair.
Yeah.
And I got a ride to Muddy Roots, and yeah, I'd gotten some heroin. I'd been shooting up meth and heroin for like 3 days. I was out of my mind high when I was on that stage. I was trying to kill myself in the pain that I was in. So it's always funny. And, another funny part of that is Joseph Huber probably, I'm pretty sure he thinks I'm just a psychopath, because every time Joseph Huber has seen me, like I came to a show of his in Casper, Wyoming, I ended up getting into a huge bar fight with like 5 people because some guy kept bumping into Ashley. So I just spit in his face, took him to the ground. And then apparently there was a bachelor party. So they like boot partied me. And like, I was fucking just spitting blood all over the bar and spitting blood at everyone in the bar that, like, and then got in my vehicle, shit faced, and drove like to a parking lot. But it's like, then that time around, like I said, it was 2 shows until Muddy Roots. The other show was in Knoxville at Barley's, was supposed to be. And we canceled the night before. So this guy had already seen me there. And there was one other situation, can't even remember what it was, but I remember seeing Joseph Huber there. He was at the merch tent. And I went to go talk with Jason Galez, who runs Muddy Roots. And just was just like, hey, how you doing? I'm like, man, you think I'm a fucking asshole. And I love Joseph Huber. Like
he's great.
Love his writing, and he deserves. I think I told him that night in Casper, I was like, you deserve to be in the Country Music Hall of Fame one day. Like you should absolutely be there. You're one of the greatest songwriters in this fucking country. Extremely underrated artist. I talk about it all the time, but
yeah.
But yeah, again, I'm just ranting now. But
it's cool, man. Yeah, that was crazy. You told me that, and like I said, we probably talked 15 minutes before you went on the set on that show at Muddy Roots. And obviously I was buzzing good and pretty drunk, and I couldn't have told any different if you were on something or not. You know what I mean? It was just crazy to me that you're able to function that well.
I lived my life that way for years.
Yeah.
Like I actually had, I'm not going to say PTSD, but basically I had an incident in Portland, Oregon when I was on tour with Devil Makes 3, where I shot up a bunch of meth right before the show in Portland. It was sold out at the Roseland Theater. Can't remember. It's a big theater on Burnside in downtown Portland. And I just did too much. I banged like 3 points of meth, and I got on stage, and I was like, and the lights, all of a sudden, I go on stage, the lights shift, and like I'm having like auditory hallucinations, and like I'm having visual hallucinations in the crowd. Damn. I remember getting off stage on that show, and Cooper, the banjo player from Devil Makes 3, I'm walking by him, and he's like, "Oh, how was it?" And I was like, "It was the worst fucking show I ever played in my goddamn life." Like, I don't know what they thought. I don't know if they ever caught on to how bad I was at that time. But no, I lived for that for years.
Yeah. What was the straw that broke the camel's back? What were you like, enough of this shit?
It started with the booze. It started with Ashley. Me and her had gotten back together. Okay. No. That's a lie. Let me rewind a little bit. Basically, I stopped using the needle and basically all hard drugs except cocaine, which I don't consider a hard drug for me and what I've experienced in my life. I started smoking crack when I was 14. It's like, I'm not condoning it. I'm just saying, from my perspective, right. I don't consider, right. So one of the conditions basically of me and Ashley getting back together was me changing my life. So that was a part of it. You know, I was in a desperate state. We had been separated for about a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
I was ready to end it all. I had a revolver in my truck, and I was sitting in my truck by myself. And I called her and I said, I'm done. Like, if we are never going to get back together, if there's no chance that I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And that was 2017, late spring.
Yeah.
And she said, if you change your life, I'll do it. And I'd been up for 3 days on meth. I went and bought a dog, and I hauled my camper up to Kentucky, a piece of land that me and Ashley had bought in a couple years prior, you know, with a plan to build a life there. Well, I'm here now. I did it. But
that's great.
I hauled a camper with my shitty little Dodge Dakota somehow, big 25-foot camper. And I sat here for 3-4 months by myself in the dead of winter. I said spring earlier, and that it took a little bit of time for me to get everything together up here. Because we just bought a raw piece of land, and so I had to clear a driveway, clear basically a homestead spot. But that was the end of the needle and the hard drugs. I continued to drink, and I didn't see it as a problem. I was like, shit, I quit the needle. I'm fine. I can drink. It doesn't matter. Drinking came to a halt in the middle of a tour. It was the first West Coast tour that us and Matt Heckler did. Because Matt Heckler, not a lot of people know this, but Matt Heckler was ready to retire, and we drug him out of retirement early on. Yeah, toward the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, Matt was done. He, but then he sobered up. We convinced him to finally go on the road. And basically, I started backing out every time I drank, which is typically a sign of liver failure. So basically, my body had enough. And the first night of tour, I blacked out, and I'm not sure what I did. I won't ever let Matt Heckler tell me what happened exactly. If you've ever had those really bad situations when you're drinking,
I just don't want to know. Just yeah.
Well, it's still something that even to this day, I'm like, Matt Heckler, just keep it to yourself. Maybe one day I'll be ready to hear what I did. But I know that I think I spit in his face. I like spitting in people's faces, apparently. I spit in his face and, took a swing at him, but I was fucking blacked out. I couldn't hardly walk. But yeah, I woke up that morning in the bus, butt naked by myself, and Ashley opened the door. I looked at her and I was like, did we have a good night? And she's like, no, we did not have a good night. And you need to go apologize to Matt Heckler. And I was like, what did I do? Like, I had no fucking clue. And then let's see, we get to Colorado. I pissed on my friend John O'Leroy, the Hangarounders.
Yeah.
The band. Yeah, I was at his house, and apparently I walked into the room that his mom was in and just pissed on his wall.
You didn't realize it?
It was just like really going downhill. And then in Phoenix, Arizona, we got there, and I was determined. I called my grandma. I was like, Grandy, I'm about to play a show sober for the first time ever. Because I'd been drinking and using drugs since I was, 12, started 12 to 14. And I cried with her a little bit and got on stage and made it work. And obviously I had a lot of slip ups.
Yeah, I could only imagine.
But I have lived sober more or less, I've lived sober, which I don't include. If you fall off the wagon for a couple of days, that's not, I don't include that as being like, oh, I've only been sober for 6 months because I fell off the wagon 6 months ago. It's like, that's not how I gauge things personally. Everyone's recovery is different, but
Right.
it's not how, like I would say I've been basically sober about 4 years. So
That's great. Yeah, man, there's something to be said about good women. You know, sounds like Ashley's been a saint to you. My wife has been a saint to me. We've been together for almost 20 years now, married for 10.
20 years? 10. How old are you?
I'm only 35. So we were high school sweethearts, you know, and I'm not too proud of my college days. I fucked up a lot of shit, you know what I mean? And for them to take us back, you know, some good girls out there.
Yeah, man. We've been together. We started dating when I was 15. So I guess about 16 years. We've been married for 10. So there's something different with that goes with that. You really know each other then. It's like you can watch them talking to someone and then that person walk away and be like, why are you bullshitting that person? Like, why'd you say that? You didn't mean that, you know, because you know someone so well after that many. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. Speaking of Ashley, since we're talking about her, I want to give her a shout out. I love her artwork, by the way. This might be my favorite cover art she's done on the Glory album. I think that's, and I'm definitely going to buy some sort of print. I've noticed you guys have them for sale online. I haven't decided which one.
She's an incredibly determined hard worker. She is in her studio every night for 3 or 4 hours just grinding. Something that I totally, well, everyone's process is different as an artist, and I'm lucky. I can come in here on a whim once a week, maybe sit around, pick on a guitar and come up with a song. You know, I get woken up in the middle of the night with a tune and I have to gauge, like, is this good enough to get out of bed for? Is this really good enough? Okay, fine. And then get up and get it done. But that type of medium, it's like, you're just grinding. That is just work. That's like being an author. It's like, you're just work. There's so much more effort involved in that medium. You know, it's like, I don't have that drive. If it took me, if I had to do that much work to get a song, fuck that. I'll work on trucks, man.
I feel you.
I'll swing a hammer. I'll do something else. So,
yeah, I'm desperately always looking. This area here is what I call my little studio, and I desperately have to be creating something, whether it be painting. I went to school for photography. I do tintypes, the old school shit.
Oh, hell yeah.
And then
we need to do that.
I play with the banjo a little bit, but I'm nowhere near, you know, where I need to be. I need to play it more.
This is my man shed, as she calls hers, the she shed. But looks like ours match pretty well, actually.
Yeah. It's got the rustic feel for sure. What about I want to change topics here in a second, but while we're kind of talking about random shit, what does Benjamin Todd like to do for fun outside of just playing music? When you're at home, it just looks like you're just hard working, man. You got daylight hours, you're off tour, you got shit you want to get done at home, and that's what you're doing. Is there anything else outside of that? Like, or is it just more business?
I mean, I have an ongoing joke, but there is certainly an element of truth to it. I really don't believe in fun. I just don't. No, like, honest, you know, I have a couple spiels, like I hate the water, I hate the beach, and the biggest reason is because I hate seeing people half naked having fun. It annoys me. I'm sorry. I'd rather like go to
do something
a bar
productive
in the Midwest and like Yeah, well, I'd rather go to a bar in the Midwest and like talk to people who just got off a ranch or just got off a combine.
Right.
You know, I don't do anything hobby wise that is not also productive. Like I love pre-emission diesel pickup trucks, specifically Cummins 12 valve, 24 valve. I like the 672.
Yeah.
I just got a 7.3. I've been building that for weeks. But more or less the way that we live, you know, I relate it to other people in my life who, and it's a curse in a way, but you know, we live off grid here. I have a solar panel system. We have well water. There is always a problem here. Just yesterday, there are leaks in one of my roofs from the storms, which I have to troubleshoot. I woke up today and it was, you know, 30 whatever degrees, so I couldn't get out with cough, which pissed me off.
Right.
You know, there is always something that needs to be built, maintained, fixed, tuned, sorted, or reorganized. Last night, you know, we were supposed to do this, and I just had a fucked up mental day. I had a bad day, which
too much shit going on.
happens less and less. Yeah, but it happens less and less as I get further into recovery and I get more control over my mind from the abuse that I put through it for years. But you know what I did last night is I just started reorganizing my entire garage. Just pulled everything out. I was like, I need to take all my oil and put it in the outside shed. It doesn't need to be taking up space here, you know. And that's just a microcosm. I have a list a mile long of things that I could bring all the time. So even hunting, like I got buddies who fish. John O'Leroy from the Hang Rounders always wants me to go fishing. I'm like, I only whitetail hunt because there's an extreme utility to it. You get a bunch of fucking meat every time.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yep.
Yeah. It's not even.
It's more about the harvest instead of the fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you on that.
Like the entire work of processing and the reward of it. It's like even turkey hunting. My buds are big into turkey hunting. I'm like, I just don't give a shit about turkey. It's not enough meat to take up that much time. I don't know. And the same thing with fish. I'm like, if I got enough, if I could sit and guarantee to get fish to, pack the freezer, if I went there for a week, I would do it. But there's no fucking guarantee that's going to happen. So yeah. I don't know. So long answer short, work is fun to me. And I don't know. I've talked about this before, but the whole process of work, you have to learn to love I believe if you want to be a truly psychologically stable person, like you have to love to work because life is work. And that's something that our society, frowns upon nowadays. Even the concept that work is an intrinsic part of our human nature and the way that we communicate and the way that we show love. And it's everything, labor is so damn important, and loving to learn and loving to work and the results of the work and the whole process. You have to learn to love work.
Yeah. I think I'm with you on that, man. 100%. And, and ultimately for people listening, I mean, that's up to you, where you put yourself, like I was telling you earlier, I'm a taxidermist. I love outdoor stuff. I like working with my hands, so I like my job. Like you gotta like what you do. But
exactly.
I want to switch gears here, man. I think this is real important, and I love the idea of it. I wish I grew up with something like this around my area. Your county, you got a music mission deal, Muhlenberg County. Can you tell me a little bit more about that? So from what I've gathered, it's basically a place where you guys raise money, get instruments, and provide them to the youth for kids that want to learn. There's heavily music influence in that area, different, the Everly Brothers and so on, John Prine and guys like that. Is that kind of the gist of it all?
Well, it certainly runs a lot deeper. I'm not going to like give my music history spiel from Muhlenberg County, because I know that Barry Duvall will probably see this, and I don't want to be embarrassed in making mistakes and getting dates wrong. But Barry Duvall is the father of Ben Duvall, and me and him, basically one of the first times we really talked, he owns a coffee shop here called Sip and Spin, which is a coffee and record shop. Great idea. Incredible place, incredible vision, great marketing, great branding. Just a good dude, Ben Duvall is in general. But, I just kind of casually brought up the idea to him. I was like, I'd always had that in the back of my mind. I was like, yeah, I'd really like to start, a nonprofit here where, we teach kids how to play instruments, underprivileged youth who couldn't afford it, and get instruments in their hands, and kind of spread musical knowledge throughout the county. And his reaction was like, yeah, let's do it. And I was like, yeah. But that's literally basically how it happened. He was like, let's do it, and then started putting one foot forward and then the next. And it's really his drive and vision, that it's really his hard work behind it that drove it, and his determination. So yeah, I mean, we just had the fundraiser, which he kind of conned me into doing to begin with, because he had done a fundraiser the previous year around the same time, and he'd asked me, I guess in the summer, he was like, hey, would you be willing, because I told him he'd wanted me to play his coffee shop or play in town somewhere, and I was like, this is my home, and I really don't want to tarnish it in that way. This is where I come to relax, but I would absolutely do it for a fundraiser. Like, I would absolutely do it for that. But basically, he asked me to do the fundraiser, which I assumed he was talking about for the Toys for Tots, which basically gets Christmas gifts, donations for Christmas gifts for children in the county. So I thought it was for that. And then, a couple weeks after I'd agreed, I was like, so this is for the Toys for Tots stuff? And he's like, no, I think we're just going to do the Muhlenberg Music Mission thing. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, don't we have a lot of fucking work to do? He's like, yeah. And then, yeah, it was just a mountain of work, which we have an incredible board that have just become family at this point. But yeah, it's very meaningful, very special. It's still in its very infantile stages. Right. We have the money. We just had that huge storm that happened, and we're all members of this community and love it here. And I think everyone was out that's involved in the music mission. I mean, there were 2.5 weeks where everyone basically stopped doing, anything for themselves, and we went to Bremen. So that stifled things. And then I've been sick, and then the holidays happened. So we've got some things to figure out, and some, pieces to move, or that kids are getting lessons by, I think, March is the target date. But yeah, right now it's very young. It's just a tiny little thing, and we're watching it grow. It's cool.
Yeah, it's amazing. I think it's a great idea. Hell, I might just, when I'm traveling, if I'm heading south, I'll just stop in and check it out one day just to see it. Yeah, the
Yeah,
whole
absolutely.
tornado
Yeah.
business, man. Uh, there's still people that from down that area I'm still waiting to hear back from. Like, I don't even know, what the hell's going on. But that's just crazy. Glad to see you guys are
Yeah,
doing
I
all
mean,
right.
yeah, I mean, for better or for worse, Bremen got a lot of national attention from the storm. I think, there are a couple of notable places. Mayfield got a lot of media attention. So
Mhm.
luckily here in Muhlenberg, we had an outpour of support from all over the state, all over the country, all over the county, especially. But
Yeah.
I can certainly say that the recovery here has been blessed in a way by the greater community and smaller community than the outskirts, which, like I said, for better or for worse, I'm not, no one is any more deserving. It just so happened that the media
Right.
attention was centered where it was. So there are certainly places on the outskirts of the county, outskirts of Bremen, and sort of the counties to the east and to the west that need more attention. So I'm hoping that some of those resources get out that way as well.
Start picking up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it will. But things are further along in Bremen than I could have ever imagined. And in comparison, I travel a bit throughout here. I'm always going to look at a tractor here, doing this, doing that, running this here, running parts there. So Bremen seems to be doing well in reference to a lot of other places.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Hopefully, yeah, like you said, more resources head that way and get things tightened up. 15 years ago, my wife, her house was, I don't know, 5 miles from here. It got hit by a tornado and they lost the house. Everyone inside was fine. They made it. But yeah, you imagine it just fucked everything up. And it was pretty cool to see, though, the community come together and help them and, get their shit cleaned up the best they could and move on. But
How did they survive? Were they in the tub or in a basement?
so it's really weird, man, because like 10 miles away, we were actually in town where my parents were, and she just had this gut feeling. She's like, man, the weather, we knew there was a storm or whatnot, but she's like, something doesn't feel right. Like, she had just had this intuition that something's fucked up. And sure enough, somehow her mom calls her from the house that got hit by the tornado. The roof's gone, the side's gone, all this, but the phone line still worked, and told her what happened. And basically, they were in the kitchen cooking, and they looked outside and they could see shit flying the opposite direction of the wind. So they knew they were in it, and they took off. It's a 2-story old house, old farmhouse. Got underneath the staircase and hobbled up, and it sounded like a freight train that went through, is how they describe it. And luckily they were okay. But like, the upstairs bathtub fell through the floor. Her brother's room had the whole wall exterior missing, and it's weird how shit was too. Like, all right, the wall's gone, but they're a foot away from the wall is a picture frame, and I think the frame was still there, but the picture was sucked out of it. Weird shit like that. It's just amazing stuff with the chicken coop. The fence was completely mangled, but the coop was still standing somehow. Trees gone everywhere. Shit, big trees. Just, yeah, chaos. They got lucky and nobody was hurt. It's just, one of those deals. The Midwest, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tornado Alley. So yeah, ever since then, like any storm, obviously she freaks out more than probably most. Been through that, and then so yeah, we'll run to the basement if we have to.
Yeah, I'm nowhere right now. Again, another thing project that has to be done for next spring. But
Yeah. All right, man. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I really appreciate you sitting down and talking with me and giving this podcast a chance. You know, we're starting to take off a little bit, so I'm excited for this year. I got
yeah,
several
man,
shows
it's
I'm going to
looking
come see
good.
you.
And yeah, next time I'll just have you out here.
Yeah.
So we don't have to deal with this phone shit.
Yeah. Internet connection can get rough.